Hi, Alastair. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Am I right in saying that you went up to Dunblane with Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister?
No, he was Leader of the Opposition, and we went with John Major, who was Prime Minister. And I think that was an incredibly powerful signal at the time, a Conservative Prime Minister going with the Leader of the Opposition to show absolute support for the community of Dunblane. And I think that that moment, in a way, is what justified politically and helped politically the legislation that we then brought in when we were in government. Since when there's not been, I think I'm right in saying there's not been a single incident in our schools remotely comparable with the sort of shootings you've been talking about in America. And if there's one thing I urge you guys at Sky to show today, Sky, you may already have shown it, but the basketball coach, Steve Kerr, I've just been watching his comments when he was doing the pre-match press conference, and he made the point, they go through these things, everybody is tweeting their thoughts and prayers, and everybody's saying all the sort of cliches that people roll out at these times, but the kind of exasperation that comes through, and I think was coming through in your previous speaker as well, it's just, I'll never forget that visit to Dunblane and seeing the sort of the coat pegs and the coats hanging off the pegs and all the sort of paraphernalia of a primary school, but it led to change. And what seems to me about this, what the guy there called this stalemate in America, and the powerful hold of these right-wing, very heavily financed lobby groups it's just horrific, and it's killing people.
Yeah, the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Let's talk about some of the challenges that the Prime Minister is going to be facing today. Finally, we believe that we're going to be seeing the report from the senior civil servant, Sue Gray, but we basically know what's in it. So isn't it time to move on now?
Well, if we, quotes, move on, as these Tory MPs keep saying, what it means is that we now live in a country where the rule of law is not an inviolable principle in Parliament, where it is no longer a principle of our Constitution that a Prime Minister and any minister should stand at the dispatch box and tell the truth, and if they inadvertently don't tell the truth, correct the record. And that says to me that these Tory MPs who are now propping up this guy, they are undermining our democracy to an extent that I don't think we've ever seen. So I think if we move on, I think we can say goodbye to the kind of democratic system that we have. And for what? For one guy's vanity and narcissism. And you're right that we know the basic story, because Boris Johnson has set the basic story. He said right at the start, there were no parties. There was no breach of the rules. He was assured. Now we know, not only was he aware of breaches of the rules, he was breaking them himself on a systematic basis, underlining the fact that as far as he's concerned, rules and laws are for little people, and big people, people with power, people with wealth, they can do what the hell they want. And you'll probably have a minister on later on. Have these people got any self-respect whatsoever? Do they not go home to wives and husbands and kids who say to them, I'm sorry, you cannot defend the indefensible any longer? When you get, I think it's George Eustace doing the round, how can these people defend? Just play back to him, Kay, some of the previous defences that he's made when they had a different line and a different story. So it was wait for the police. It turned out he broke the law. And then it was wait for Sue Gray. And they say, well, whatever Sue Gray says, as you've just said, we know the story anyway. The guy is a liar and a charlatan. He's doing nothing for this country in terms of taking the country forward. And the entire Conservative Party is
Let me jump in, Alastair, if I may.
In this myth. Sorry?
OK. Let me jump in, if I may. A couple of things, really. I mean, the Prime Minister was fined once, not several times. So the police have looked at this in detail and they've decided that it was one fine that he should pay. You talk about inadvertent misleading of Parliament. He says he didn't know at the time. And then as soon as he did know, he came back to the dispatch box and corrected himself.
He didn't correct himself. He came back and said sorry for the actions of other people. That's what he did, and that's what he always does. And the point about the single fine, I'm afraid, as Sadiq Khan and others said yesterday, the Metropolitan Police have got a lot of questions to answer about the extent to which they investigated this properly. And also, Kay, the one fine is enough to sink this guy because he insisted, quotes, there were no parties. We know he was at them. You don't just need the pictures. You need the testimony of other people. And I'll tell you the other thing that happens. I worked in Downing Street. This would never, ever have happened under Tony Blair, under Theresa May, under, I think, any previous Prime Minister. This is Johnson's character and Johnson's culture. So I just don't believe that when the police say, you know, one fine, I think that was them just trying to get out of this very difficult situation for them.
OK, before I let you go, what do you think is going to happen? Because it would appear that nobody else wants the job. Nobody's certainly challenging the Prime Minister. So it doesn't matter how much mud is slung around in the chamber of the House of Commons and on radio programmes and TV programmes like ours. It's still going to be in post next week after that.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But if that is the case, then, you know, I don't want to swear at this time in the morning, but this country is in a very, very bad way. If this guy survives, are we just to accept as a country? Is this what our democracy has come to? A Prime Minister can break the law. A Prime Minister can lie repeatedly at the House of Commons dispatch box, send out his cabinet of lapdogs to go out and repeat it for him. Have we got to a stage now where there are literally no principles attached to the basis of our democracy, including the rule of law? Then, if that is the case, we are finished. And Tom Dukenhart was absolutely right yesterday. What this says is we do not have a serious functioning government. And if he was doing other great things, the economy was booming, inflation wasn't soaring, growth was high, none of which is happening. If he was actually leading in the world, if he was actually delivering on the promises that he made at the last election, he's doing none of that because the truth is the guy is amoral, he's a liar, he's a charlatan, he's a crook. And if those Tory MPs have not got the slightest bit of self-respect and integrity and honesty to look in their hearts and look in their souls and say, are we really going to damage our country in this way, then they deserve to be kicked out as well.